Fluorescent lights buzzed. Michael's cartwheels squeaked down the sterile corridor at 11:47 p.m. His fingers found the pink bracelet. Always there, always hidden. The elevator doors slammed open on the 8th floor. A woman in charcoal gray, briefcase welded to her chest, stabbed the 12th floor button. He stepped in, pressed 15. The executive level needed cleaning too. The elevator jerked upward. Shuddered. Died between floors 10 and 11. Emergency lights strobed red, carving shadows across her marble face. Her breath hitched. Sharp. Desperate. His stayed calm. Too calm for a man trapped in a metal box. The silence stretched between them like a blade. "Looks like we'll be here for a while," he said quietly, his voice carrying a strange note of resignation that made her look at him for the first time. 6 hours earlier, Michael Roberts had awakened in the cramped trailer that served as home for him and his daughter. The afternoon sun sliced through thin curtains, illuminating Emma's artwork scattered across their tiny kitchen table. She'd fallen asleep on the couch again, clutching her sketchbook against her chest like a shield. He pulled a blanket over her small frame, careful not to wake her, and glimpsed the unfinished drawing on the open page. A woman in a white coat, standing in what looked like a laboratory. At 7 years old, Emma drew with the precision of someone much older, though her hands shook more each day. The medication organizer on the counter told its own story. 3 pills left, maybe 4 days if he stretched them. $847 for the next refill. Michael had counted and recounted his bank balance so many times the numbers felt burned into his brain. $2,400 monthly income. Rent took $900. Utilities, groceries, and Emma's doctor visits devoured the rest. The math never worked, no matter how many times he tried to make it add up differently. Mrs. Patterson, their elderly neighbor, knocked softly before entering. She'd been watching Emma during his night shifts for 2 years, refusing payment beyond occasional help with her leaky faucet or broken heater. "How's our girl today?" she asked, her weathered hand smoothing Emma's hair. Michael showed her the pill organizer. Mrs. Patterson's face fell. She'd seen this routine before. Watched him stretch medications and skip meals to make ends meet. "Something will work out," she whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. The drive to Cedar Falls Regional Hospital took 23 minutes through empty streets. Michael's pickup truck coughed and wheezed, burning oil and hope in equal measure. The radio crackled to life. NeuroGen Therapeutics announces major clinical trial expansion at Cedar Falls Regional. CEO Dr. Sarah Matthews, a hometown success story, returns to pioneer breakthrough treatments for rare childhood diseases. Michael turned up the volume, listening to the interview snippet where Dr. Matthews spoke about making cutting-edge medicine accessible to all families. Emma would be excited. She collected newspaper clippings about female doctors like other kids collected baseball cards. Now, trapped in the elevator with this woman in expensive clothes, Michael studied her face in the dim emergency lighting. She looked younger than he'd expected, maybe mid-30s, with dark hair pulled back severely and eyes that seemed to catalog everything. Her manicured fingers drummed against her briefcase in a pattern that spoke of barely controlled anxiety. "I'm Sarah," she said finally, extending a hand that trembled slightly. "Michael," he replied, noticing how soft her palm felt against his calloused skin. The handshake lasted a beat too long, both of them searching the other's face for something neither could name. "Emergency button's not working," Sarah announced after stabbing it repeatedly. Her voice carried the crisp authority of someone used to having problems solved quickly and efficiently. Michael settled onto the floor with practiced ease, back against the wall, and pulled a thermos from his maintenance bag. Buildings from 1972. Elevator company went out of business in 2006. Maintenance crew won't check the shafts until 6 a.m. His casual acceptance of their situation seemed to unnerve her more than the actual predicament. She remained standing, pacing the small space like a caged animal. 6 hours! The panic in her voice was barely contained now. Michael poured coffee into the thermos cap and offered it to her. "Maybe less if we're lucky, maybe more if we're not." Sarah stared at the steaming cup as if it were a foreign object. Most people in her position would be demanding solutions, making calls, finding ways to expedite their rescue. Instead, This janitor sat calmly, drinking coffee as if being trapped in an elevator was just another Tuesday night inconvenience. Sarah's phone showed no signal. The building's old construction and their position between floors created a dead zone. She'd never felt so disconnected from the world that ran on her schedule and responded to her commands. "You work here?" she asked, finally accepting the coffee and settling onto the floor across from him. The distance between them suddenly felt both intimate and vast. 6 years, night shift, Michael confirmed. Keeps me home during the day with Emma. The name slipped out before he could stop it, and Sarah caught the way his hand moved protectively to his shirt pocket. "Emma's your daughter?" Something in Sarah's voice shifted, became softer, more human. Michael nodded, unable to hide the pride that always accompanied talk of his child. 7 years old, wants to be a doctor when she grows up, smart as hell, draws pictures of medical equipment she's never seen, reads about diseases she can't pronounce. He pulled out his phone, showed Sarah a photo of Emma grinning at the camera, gap-toothed and radiant despite the hospital bracelet visible on her thin wrist. Sarah's breath caught, and she leaned closer to study the image. "She's beautiful," Sarah whispered, and Michael heard something broken in her voice. "What's wrong with her?" The question came out sharper than intended, medical rather than maternal. Michael's expression hardened slightly. "Juvenile neurological disorder. 1 in 50,000 kids get it. No cure, just management." He took back his phone, protective instincts flaring. Sarah's face had gone pale in the emergency lighting. "The treatment? Is it working?" Her voice was carefully controlled now, professional interest masking something deeper. "When we can afford it." The words carried years of frustration and sleepless nights. $847 every 2 weeks. Insurance covers 60% if we're lucky. Michael's laugh held no humor. "I make $14 an hour pushing a mop. You do the math." Sarah did the math, and the numbers made her sick. She knew those numbers, had seen them in countless patient files, had watched families like Michael's get filtered out by financial screening processes she'd helped design. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Sarah watched Michael gently roll something between his fingers inside his pocket, a nervous habit that seemed to calm him. "What's in there?" she asked softly. Michael hesitated, then pulled out a small pink hospital bracelet, worn soft from handling. Emma's first admission bracelet, patient ID 847392. The numbers hit Sarah like a physical blow. She knew that patient number, had seen it in red ink on rejection letters, had personally signed the financial ineligibility determination. "Patient?" she said. "She drew you," Michael said suddenly, startling Sarah from her spiraling thoughts. "What?" "Emma. She draws pictures from the newspaper. You were in the Cedar Falls Gazette last week. Hometown girl makes good, comes back to help sick kids. She said you looked like a superhero." Sarah's eyes filled with tears she couldn't explain. "I'm not a superhero. To her you are. Woman from Cedar Falls who became a doctor came back to save children like her." Michael's voice was gentle but pointed. "She asks me every day if she can meet you." Sarah felt the weight of irony crushing her chest. Emma Roberts, patient 847392, had been dreaming of meeting the very woman who'd signed off on denying her access to life-saving treatment. "Why can't she?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. "Because men like me don't meet women like you. Different worlds." Michael's voice held no bitterness, just acceptance of a reality he'd never questioned. "What if she could? What if I arranged something?" The offer slipped out before Sarah could stop herself. Michael studied her face with new suspicion. "Lady, I don't know who you think you are, but pharmaceutical CEOs don't meet janitors' kids for photo ops." Sarah's mistake hung in the air between them like smoke. She'd revealed too much, assumed too much. "I meant I have connections, I could ask." But Michael was already pulling back, walls rising. "You're not just visiting, are you?" His voice had gone cold, distant. Before Sarah could answer, the elevator lurched violently, lights flickering. For a moment, hope flared. Maybe rescue was coming. But the car settled deeper into its stuck position, with a grinding metallic sound, that spoke of deeper mechanical failure. "We're here for the night," Michael said with finality that chilled Sarah more than the emergency lighting. She looked at this man who stayed calm in crisis, who loved his daughter fiercely enough to work multiple jobs for medicine money, who carried a hospital bracelet like a talisman. The guilt was eating her alive. "Michael, there's something I need to tell you." But even as she said it, she knew the truth would destroy whatever fragile connection they'd built in this metal box suspended between floors. The confession died in her throat as Michael's phone buzzed with a text message. His face went white as he read it. "I need to get out of here, now." The calm facade cracked, revealing raw panic underneath. "What's wrong?" Sarah asked, but Michael was already on his feet, slamming his fist against the elevator doors. "Emma's having an episode. A bad one. This happens when she misses medication." His voice broke on the last word, and Sarah watched this strong man crumble under the weight of helplessness. "Marcus, stop. You'll hurt yourself." The name slipped out. Patient 847392's file had listed Marcus Roberts as emergency contact before the system had updated to Michael. Sarah caught her mistake too late. Michael spun around, eyes wild with something between hope and fury. "How do you know that name? I haven't gone by Marcus in 6 years." The elevator suddenly felt smaller, the air thinner. Sarah's carefully constructed cover story disintegrated, like tissue paper in rain. "My real name is Dr. Sarah Matthews," she said quietly, the words falling like stones into still water. "I'm the CEO of NeuroGen Therapeutics." Michael's thermos hit the floor with a metallic clang that echoed in the confined space. Coffee spread across the elevator floor like spilled blood. "The woman Emma draws? The one from the newspaper?" His voice was barely recognizable. "Yes." The single word carried the weight of mountains. Michael stood slowly, his face cycling through confusion, realization, and finally, rage. "So, this is what? Coincidence? Rich CEO happens to get stuck with poor janitor whose kid needs her drug?" The words came out like bullets, each one finding its mark. "Marcus, please." "No." His voice cut through her plea like a blade. "Let me guess. You've been watching me, researching your charity case. Is this some kind of PR stunt? Pharmaceutical executive meets struggling father, discovers the human cost of her business decisions?" "It's not like that," Sarah whispered, but her protestation sounded hollow even to her own ears. "Then what is it like? You knew who I was. You knew about Emma." Michael was pacing now, trapped animal energy looking for an outlet. "I knew Emma's case, patient 847392, but I didn't know you were her father until you showed me the bracelet." The admission hung between them like a blade. Michael stopped pacing. "You know her case?" His voice was dangerously quiet. "She's on our clinical trial waiting list. Has been for 8 months. The truth came out in pieces, each revelation cutting deeper. "What waiting list? I was never told about any waiting list." Sarah's voice became smaller with each word. "The financial screening eliminated her application, family income too low to afford trial participation." The silence that followed was deafening. When Michael finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of broken dreams and shattered faith. "You're telling me there's a cure for my daughter, but I'm too poor to access it?" "It's not a cure. It's experimental, and there are costs." "How much?" The question was a demand, not a request. Sarah hesitated, knowing the number would destroy him. $2,000 a month during the trial period. Michael's laugh was hollow, bitter as burnt coffee. 2,000. I make 2,400 a month. After rent, food, utilities, there's maybe 200 left on a good month. He sat down heavily, head in his hands. "That's why I came back to Cedar Falls, to change the program, to make it accessible." Sarah's voice was pleading now, desperate. "When?" Michael's question was simple, devastating. "That meeting with the hospital board tomorrow. We're proposing income-based pricing. Tomorrow." Michael's voice was flat, emotionless. "Emma's been waiting 8 months, and the meeting that could save her life is tomorrow." He looked up at Sarah with eyes full of pain. 8 months of watching her get sicker. 8 months of stretching pills and skipping doses. 8 months of telling her bedtime stories about brave doctors who save children, while the real doctor who could save her was too busy being a CEO to notice she existed. Sarah reached for her briefcase with shaking hands. "I'm calling my research director. We can fast-track Emma's application." "Right now? At 2:30 in the morning?" Michael's voice held disbelief and desperate hope in equal measure. "Dr. Kim works around the clock, like me." Sarah dialed, her hands trembling. "Dr. Kim, it's Sarah. I need emergency authorization for patient 847392. "Yes, I know it's late. Income waiver, full pharmaceutical coverage." "Because I'm the CEO and I'm authorizing it." Michael watched in stunned silence as Sarah argued with someone on the phone for 10 minutes, her voice growing more commanding with each exchange. When she finally hung up, her face was flushed with victory and exhaustion. "Done. Emma can start the trial next week." For a moment, Michael couldn't speak. The news he'd prayed for, fought for, dreamed of, had just materialized from a phone call made by a woman trapped in an elevator with him. "Why?" The question came out as a whisper. "Because she's 7 years old and she draws pictures of doctors. Because you work 3 jobs to afford her medicine. Because—" Sarah's voice cracked. "Because I was her once." She pulled out her phone, showed Michael a photo that made his breath catch. A young girl in a hospital bed, thin and pale, surrounded by medical equipment that dwarfed her small frame. "Leukemia, age 8. My parents cleaned offices to pay for treatment. We lived in Pine Valley Mobile Home Park, Lot 47. Michael's eyes widened with recognition. "That's 3 lots from us." "I know. I drove by yesterday after my flight landed. Saw Emma playing outside. She looks like I did." The confession hung between them, bridging the gap between CEO and janitor, between success story and struggling father. They sat in silence, processing the impossible coincidence that had brought them together. "So you became a doctor to help kids like yourself," Michael said finally, understanding beginning to dawn. "I became a CEO to fix the system that almost killed me. My parents went bankrupt. We lost everything. I got better because of an experimental drug, but it cost $50,000 a month. Insurance didn't cover experimental treatments back then." "How did you afford it?" Michael asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "We didn't. The company gave it to me free as part of a clinical trial. I was lucky number 847. Michael stared at her, pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. "Emma's patient number is 847392. I requested that number specifically. When I saw her file, Sarah wiped tears from her eyes. "I saw myself." "You've been watching over her." It wasn't a question. "I've been trying to, but company protocols, FDA requirements, insurance barriers, it's more complicated than just wanting to help." Sarah's voice was thick with frustration and guilt. "So you're not just helping her, you're helping yourself." Michael's insight cut straight to the heart of it. "What do you mean?" "You're fixing what broke your family. You're saving the kid you used to be." Sarah nodded, tears flowing freely now. "Every child in our clinical trials, I see 8-year-old me in that hospital bed. But Emma, she's exactly like I was. Same age when symptoms started, same disease category, same financial situation. Same mobile home park," Michael added softly. "Same mobile home park." The connection between them felt cosmic now, beyond coincidence. Michael reached over, gently touched her hand. "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing her, for remembering what it felt like to be the sick kid whose parents couldn't afford hope." But then Michael pulled his hand back, suspicion creeping into his voice. "Wait, if you can authorize this, why haven't you done it before? For Emma, for other kids in her situation." Sarah's face fell, and Michael saw the truth before she spoke it. "Because I lied to Dr. Kim. I don't have the authority to waive fees unilaterally. I panicked. I wanted to help so badly that I promised something I can't deliver." The words hit Michael like physical blows. "So Emma still can't get the medicine. Not unless something changes with the board tomorrow. And if they say no?" Sarah looked at him helplessly. Then I'll have to find another way. What other way? Michael's voice was sharp with renewed desperation. I don't know yet, but I'll find one. I have money, personal money. I can pay for Emma's treatment myself. But even as she said it, Sarah realized the deeper problem. You really don't know, do you? Michael said quietly. You're just as trapped as I am. You became CEO to fix the system, but the system is bigger than any one person, even you. The truth of his words settled over them like dust. Sarah had spent years building a company, raising funds, managing investors, believing that success would give her the power to help children like Emma. But power, she was learning, was more complicated than she'd imagined. Unless, Sarah had an idea, dangerous and desperate. What if we force the board's hand? What if we make it impossible for them to say no? How? Michael leaned forward, hope flickering again. Media, public pressure, tell Emma's story, show people what the pharmaceutical industry does to families like yours. The plan formed as she spoke, risky but possible. You'd sacrifice your career for a publicity stunt? Michael was skeptical. I'd sacrifice my career to save children, starting with Emma? But even as Sarah outlined her plan, her phone rang. Dr. Kim's number flashed on the screen. Sarah, emergency. I called the board chair about your authorization. He's threatening to remove you as CEO if you proceed with the Emma Roberts case. Emergency board meeting at 8 a.m. Sarah's face went white. I understand. There's more. He's also threatening to shut down the Cedar Falls clinical site entirely. Says if you're going to override financial protocols, the location is no longer financially viable. Sarah hung up, devastated. The choice had become impossible. Save Emma and lose the ability to help hundreds of other children, or sacrifice Emma to preserve the program. What did he say? Michael asked, reading the defeat in her posture. If I help Emma, they'll shut down the entire clinical program. Hundreds of children will lose access to treatment. The trolley problem, writ large in pharmaceutical politics. I can't let you destroy the program for Emma, Michael said finally, though every word felt like swallowing glass. And I can't let Emma die when I have the power to save her. Sarah's voice was raw with anguish. But you don't have power. That's what we just learned. None of us do. The system was bigger than both of them, more entrenched than either had imagined. They sat in defeated silence as the emergency lights cast shifting shadows on the elevator walls. Outside, the world moved on. Patients sleeping in hospital beds, families making impossible choices, children like Emma counting pills and dreaming of tomorrow. At 4:45 a.m., Michael's phone buzzed again. Mrs. Patterson. Emma unconscious, paramedics here, Cedar Falls ER. Michael's calm finally shattered completely. He threw himself against the elevator doors, screaming for help that wouldn't come. Sarah watched this strong man break apart, piece by piece, and made a decision that would cost her everything. She pulled out her phone and started typing not to Dr. Kim or the board, but to every medical journalist, patient advocate, and health reporter in her contacts. If the system wouldn't bend, maybe it could be broken. What are you doing? Michael asked through his panic. Starting a war, Sarah replied, hitting send on messages that would destroy her career and possibly save his daughter. I'm telling Emma's story. I'm telling all their stories. Her phone immediately started buzzing with responses. Reporters smelling blood in the water, advocates ready to mobilize, patients' families eager to share their own impossible choices. At 6:30 a.m., the elevator repair crew finally arrived. As the doors opened, Michael and Sarah stepped out into the harsh hospital fluorescent light, both changed by their night in that metal box between floors. I need to get to Emma, Michael said, but Sarah was already following him to his truck. I'm coming with you. Sarah, you have a board meeting. They can wait. Emma can't. They drove through the pre-dawn darkness in Michael's pickup truck, Sarah's expensive suit incongruous against the torn passenger seat. Neither spoke about the messages that were already spreading across social media. Emma's photo, her story, the impossible choice between corporate profits and a child's life. By the time they reached Cedar Falls Regional, the story was trending nationally. At the hospital, They found Emma in the pediatric ICU, unconscious but stable. Mrs. Patterson sat beside the bed, her weathered hands holding Emma's small one. "She kept asking for her daddy," the older woman said, tears streaming down her face. "I told her you were coming, that you'd fix everything like you always do." Sarah knelt beside Emma's bed, checking her pulse and breathing with practiced medical efficiency. "We need to start her on neural sync immediately," she told the attending physician. "I'm authorizing emergency compassionate use." "Dr. Matthews, you can't," the doctor began, but Sarah cut him off. "I can and I am. Put it in my name, my responsibility." As Sarah personally administered the first dose of the experimental medication, she knew she was ending her career as a pharmaceutical executive. But watching Emma's vital signs stabilize, seeing color return to her pale cheeks, she felt more like a doctor than she had in years. Emma woke around noon, groggy but alert. She saw Sarah sitting beside her bed and smiled, with the gap-toothed grin that had captured hearts across social media. "Are you the doctor lady from my drawings?" Emma asked weakly. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm Dr. Sarah. Daddy said you might help me get better." Sarah squeezed Emma's small hand. "I'm going to try very hard." Emma reached for her sketchbook and showed Sarah a new drawing. The two of them holding hands, both smiling, with words written in careful 7-year-old script. "Thank you for caring." By afternoon, the story had exploded across national media. Emma's story was trending worldwide, with thousands of families sharing their own battles with pharmaceutical access. The board meeting that was supposed to fire Sarah instead became a damage control session, with members fielding calls from senators, advocacy groups, and angry constituents. The pressure became so intense that by evening the board announced a complete restructuring of their patient assistance programs. 3 months later, Dr. Sarah Matthews, no longer CEO but now attending pediatrician at Cedar Falls Regional, made her morning rounds. She'd lost her corporate position, but found her calling again, treating children instead of managing profit margins. Her salary was a fraction of what she'd made before, but she went home each night fulfilled in ways she'd forgotten were possible. Room 314 housed her favorite patient. Emma Roberts, age 7, sat up in bed drawing with steady hands. The neural sync treatment had worked better than anyone had dared hope. Her motor skills had improved dramatically, her seizures had stopped, and her infectious smile had returned full force. "Good morning, Dr. Sarah," Emma said brightly, holding up her latest artwork. It showed Sarah in a doctor's coat, stethoscope around her neck, standing beside a hospital that looked remarkably like Cedar Falls Regional. "This is you now," Emma explained. "You look happier." Sarah was happier. After the board had fired her, she'd accepted the pediatrician position at 1/10 of her former salary. But she treated dozens of children on the expanded patient assistance program she'd helped create through media pressure and public outrage. The system hadn't been fixed overnight, but it had been cracked open wide enough for light to get in. Michael appeared in the doorway, carrying breakfast from the hospital cafeteria. He'd been promoted to maintenance supervisor after Sarah had recommended him, and the better hours and health insurance had transformed their lives. "Morning, Sarah," he said, using her first name now instead of the formal title. They'd become unlikely friends, bonded by that night in the elevator and Emma's remarkable recovery. Emma launched into stories about school, friends, and art class. Normal 7-year-old problems that were the most beautiful things Michael had ever heard. No more talk of seizures or medication schedules or the fear that lived in every parent's heart when their child was sick. "Dr. Sarah," Emma said suddenly, "are you sad you're not CEO anymore?" Sarah considered the question seriously. "No, sweetheart. I'm exactly where I want to be." "Good," Emma said matter-of-factly, "because I need you to be my doctor forever." She showed Sarah her final drawing, herself as a grown-up doctor, standing next to an older Sarah, both wearing white coats and smiling. "You want to be a doctor?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. "I want to be like you, help sick kids who can't afford to get better." The words came out with the simple certainty that only children possessed. Sarah felt tears threatening again, happy tears this time. "That's a wonderful dream, Emma." "It's not a dream," Emma corrected with 7-year-old logic. "It's a plan." And looking at this remarkable child who'd survived medical crisis and financial impossibility with her spirit intact, Sarah believed every word as they walked to the elevator. The same one where everything had changed. Michael reflected on the strange turns life could take. "How's she really doing?" he asked when Emma was out of earshot. "Better than we hoped. The neural sync is working beautifully. She'll need medication for life, but she'll live a completely normal life. And the cost?" Michael's still worried about money, probably always would. "Covered completely. The patient assistance program covers 15 kids in Cedar Falls now, with more being approved every month." Sarah smiled. "You saved her," Michael said simply. "We saved her. You fought for her, I just finally listened." The elevator arrived with its familiar mechanical groan. As the doors opened, both remembered that night that had changed everything. His calm resignation, her growing panic, the pink hospital bracelet that had bridged two worlds. That evening, Sarah drove home to her small apartment near the hospital. No more mansion, no more luxury car. But her kitchen table was covered with drawings from Emma and letters from other children in the program. On her nightstand, she kept 2 hospital bracelets. Emma's original pink one with patient number 847392, and her own childhood bracelet with patient number 847. 2 sick children, 26 years apart, both saved by experimental medicine and second chances. Her phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Emma wants to know if you'll come to her art show next week. She's dedicating it to Dr. Sarah, who remembers what it feels like to be a patient." Sarah typed back immediately, "Wouldn't miss it." She looked out her window at Cedar Falls, the small town where she'd been born, learned to be a doctor, and found her way back to medicine's true purpose. Tomorrow, she'd see Emma again, along with 15 other children whose lives had been changed by access to experimental treatments. Children who might grow up to be doctors themselves, who would remember what it felt like to be sick and fight for other sick children. The cycle would continue, hopefully with more compassion and fewer barriers. Sarah touched Emma's hospital bracelet one more time, then turned off the light. Outside, snow began to fall on Cedar Falls, covering everything in quiet, white promise. In the trailer park, Michael tucked Emma into bed, both of them dreaming of tomorrows filled with possibility instead of fear. At the hospital, the night shift began. Janitors cleaning floors, nurses checking patients, doctors saving lives, one small miracle at a time. And in her small apartment, a former pharmaceutical CEO slept peacefully, knowing she'd found her way home to the reason she'd become a doctor in the first place. The pink hospital bracelet on her nightstand caught the streetlight, a symbol of connection between past patient and present healer, between broken system and the people determined to fix it, one child at a time.